Hello. Welcome everyone to another episode of Aligned. My name is Erin and I'm one of your hosts, and I'm very excited about today's episode. It is a fun conversation between myself and Lea, and I invited Lea back onto the podcast to talk about something very exciting and special that is coming up at the end of the year. And Lea has created something called Hopeful Spells. And it's a ritual that is founded upon a very ancient Celtic kind of like pre-religion ritual that has a German name that I'm not going to try to pronounce, but it marks these very distinct 12 nights between, I think, the 26th of December until early January. And it's this liminal space, where we say like the veil is thin, or in this case, it's kind of like time outside of time. And we talk about what that actually means during the episode. But it's a very powerful portal of sorts that can be used to plan for the year ahead. And what Lea went ahead and did is she put kind of a framework around this ritual and gave us a way that we can personalize it to our unique mechanics, to our astrology, taking the theme that we're individually going to be experiencing throughout the year and focus our intentions around that. Because one thing we talk about is how, at least in my case, I don't tend to resonate a lot with ritualizing different things, full moons and different other kind of portals throughout the year. And I definitely don't resonate with a lot of the new age manifestation rhetoric that is out there. But what I think Hopeful Spells provides is a really grounded way of anchoring yourself into the right intentions for the year to come and aligning yourself to your correct way of getting there and making that happen. So during this episode, we'll talk a little bit more about this specific ritual, how it's this perfect balance of kind of taking accountability and action over certain intentions that you have, while also being able to give a lot of your wishes over to God, universe, source, whatever you sort of resonate with. We also both share our personal experiences having done the ritual last year and looking back retroactively, looking at kind of what showed up for us, the different themes that were at play. And yeah, it's honestly just incredible. So I won't share too much more now. I'll just let you guys get into the episode. And if you are interested in doing the Hopeful Spells for yourself, you still have a few more weeks before the start of this ritual. I will link everything in the show notes for how you can get involved and do this alongside us. And wishing everyone a beautiful end to the year. I know that we're just at the start of December, but I feel like December always goes by in the blink of an eye with holidays and family time and all these different plans and events and things. So yeah, take it easy, take it slow. Enjoy this time to the fullest, and we'll see you next week. All right. Well, I'm excited to talk about your hopeful spells and hear a little bit more about this ritual, and also personally invested because I did it last year. And if you remember, I had both of my brothers do it with me, one of which, my brother Jack, who's been on the podcast a handful of times, who's like all into like this stuff, expected that he would do it with me. But my older brother was the wild card. And I just loved how accessible it was. And I'm not someone who really ritualizes much. Like, I don't tend to focus too much energy on new moons, full moons. Like, I'm aware of them. I notice how my body feels and changes and things. But I don't, again, try to like overly ritualize anything. Sometimes I feel like that takes a little bit of our power, like outside of ourselves, if we're constantly relying on like these external cycles to determine like how we're going to feel and what we're going to do. However, I think that this particular ritual, not just like the time of the year and what it stands for, but also like what you've curated around this time is very different. And the way that, in my opinion, it's less about like what's actually going on, and it's more about like connecting more deeply with yourself and preparing for the year to come. And having just looked at all of like my information, having gone through your program, for lack of a better word, it's so insanely spot on. And I can already see how this year to come, all the things that I've started doing already to prepare for it have been because I've already had this intuitive knowing that, like, okay, this is what's coming this year. And again, it's just wild to see through astrology how that maps out. But I would love to just first maybe start off with speaking to what is this actual like time of the year? What's this ritual? Where is it backed in?
I don't know, to be honest.
But
I'm not
maybe what's
a.
your history with it?
I'm. My history. Yeah, I'm not a first line. I'm not interested in like the history of things and the numbers and the. For me, what's most important is how does it make me feel? Is it practical and is it easy to incorporate into my life? I mean, I obviously have a little bit of information. It's a ritual from the Celtics, which I guess is my culture. Um, and yeah, it's you have I mean, there's always portals, you have the 8-8 portal, you have which is the Lion's Gate, you have like the full moon, as you said. But for me, I only do things just like you when they feel intuitive and I feel urged. And I think 2-3 years ago, um, I was like, okay, I want to join the Rauhnächte ritual, which is what it's called. I still don't know if there's an English name for it, but what you're basically doing is you're tapping into the portal that opens on the 25th of December, and it goes all the way through to the 6th of January. And in this time, you can basically tap into the cosmic support that is available for us. And with that, give over some of your intentions, some of your wishes to the universe so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting all by yourself. Now, I love grounded spirituality and no bullshit. So I'm not going to sit here and say everything is like easy breezy and you have to, like because you did this ritual. What it helps me with, this is how I used it for the past 2 years, is that because I had a clear vision and a clear goal, I knew exactly when the universe was presenting me with a test and when to not back down and when to like lean in and be like, okay, you know what? This is not like super important this year because I have this other focus of my life that I want to put all my energy in. And it's helped me to set better boundaries, to like just also understand why are certain things happening. I had a pretty big year. And because I wasn't expecting it, the way that I did the ritual last year, tailored and upgraded the ritual for this year. And I created this personalized ChatGPT prompt that where you can fill in your, I call it the astro deeds, like your astro information. And then you go beyond the surface level of just understanding the big picture theme of your year, but like going into the nuances, what themes are likely going to show up. And because I hadn't done that, I was like, fuck, am I off track? Like I was supposed to be tapping into my communities this year. And now all of this home stuff is coming up and like my inner world is completely shaking up. Like, am I doing something wrong? And I went back in. I'm like, there's something has to be wrong here. And that's how basically I, like trial and error, I
Yeah.
improved the ritual. And yeah, it's just helping me to
Yeah.
stay sane and in the moment and accept
Yeah,
it's okay.
using the ChatGPT prompt that you created, I also went back on this past year. And I mean, you have a birthday that's at the start of the year, so it's kind of nice because you pretty much only have one perfection year like within the year. I have two because, it starts in April. So I'm still in my like last year theme, but using your ChatGPT prompt, the level of like detail and specificity that it brought in that I didn't really see or access last year. Like last year was a lot more just kind of like high level themes, whereas with that prompt, holy hell. And it goes so much more deep. And again, like to be able to reflect back and be like, okay, yeah, all this stuff I'm going through right now, it had to happen. And something else, so I did actually look up a little bit of information about the history of
I
the.
was hoping you would do that.
And so, well, for even before I say that, I have trained my ChatGPT. My brother sent me this like instruction because you can create projects in ChatGPT and you can create instructions for how it interacts with you. And so like I always have so many different projects and I have different like instructions for each, but I have this prompt that's called absolute mode because I hate being BS'd. I hate the fluff, I hate the jargon, I hate all of that. Sorry for hate, such a strong word. I very dislike that part of AI. And so I've trained it to just be really like kind of savage and cutthroat and just like give it to me straight. And it makes like looking up a lot of these things a lot more useful because I don't get the like airy fairy stuff along with it.
One thing I
But
have to mention here, Erin is one of the people that she's like, give it to me as rough as you can say it. I don't mind. I have a thick skin. I can take it. And then she just sits there like, yeah, checks out.
yep. But anyways, when I looked up the ritual, what I thought was really interesting is it's all about like temporal dislocation. So the 12 nights exist because the lunar and the solar calendars don't match. So there's a gap that was seen as like unclaimed time and days outside of ordinary chronology. So that's kind of like where that like liminal space, why it's there.
Yeah, I think that's I remember now. It's a lot of let's just imagine it like this. A lot of the events and the cards like that are going to happen in the next year, they're like kind of loose in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And when you send out your wishes, you're basically giving the universe a structure, a direction, an intention, how to organize these events and like what you want to focus on, obviously within the theme of what's going to happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I once did a mushroom trip and I understood what intention was doing, because for me, like a lot of these words are just so abstract that, and it's the same as with manifestation. You know, you think, oh yeah, once I think positive thoughts, then everything is gonna
Mm-hmm.
just magically work out in my life. And I when I did this mushroom trip, I understood that intention is basically you giving your thoughts and your energy a focus, and you set boundaries as to what you are no longer focusing on. So let's say you're dating and your intention is to find a meaningful connection, then naturally you probably have some terms and conditions for that. For me, for example, it's like I'm not interested in anything like casual. Obviously, there's always rules, like exceptions to the rule.
Right.
But if I'm looking for a committed partnership where I'm valued and seen and we can build something together, then there's a few things that I'm looking out for and am going to put my energy towards, and others I just won't put my focus on. And that's what intention is doing. And then with that, you're building, like step by step, it has a ripple effect, and then slowly everything kind of disappears that is not in alignment with that intention.
Yeah. Yeah. So now maybe explain how the ritual sort of works or what it's like confounded on.
Okay, so if you know the Rauhnächte, which is the 12 nights between Christmas and the New Year, fucking long word. It's basically this portal where you write down 13 wishes. So for each day, you have one specific wish. And every day from the 25th to the 6th of January, you take one wish out of the bowl that you place them in and you burn that wish. And with that burning, the wish basically goes over to the universe, and then the intention is placed there and the rearrangement is happening. And so I was like, okay, how do I actually write down the wishes? Like, what do I found them on? And is it just random? And then I was thinking, why don't I use the human design and the astrological theme of the year to give these wishes some guidance, some alignment that you actually write down something that you can achieve because it is the way that you're designed to operate. Because some people, they write down, this football club it's like a football club becomes champion. And I was like, that's not, how is that gonna affect your life? Like, we have to, I'm gonna take over and give you some guidance on this. And so, I basically thought, okay, it's coming from the thoughts. Obviously, you can also write it down from an intuitive knowing, but most people write it down from what's in their mind. How can I help them at that stage to declutter the thoughts that are actually aligned and supporting them in reaching this intention? And I was like, okay, let's take the human design motivation, because for me, that has been one of the biggest game changers in understanding how I can quiet my mind. And it helps me also to discern whether advice from the outside is actually going to make me feel more relaxed in my body, or it's just going to create unnecessary tension. And that's basically how it came about. Do we maybe want to give I would love to know about your theme, because you have 2 themes for last year with your specific, motivation configuration, and then how it showed up for you. And as Erin already said, like, my birthday is on the 2nd of January. And that's why I say the new year, because for me, it's the new year. But if your birthday is in the middle of the year, then you have 2 themes for 1 year.
Yeah. And these are called perfection years, right?
Yeah. Also, again, weird word.
Yeah, such a weird word. But it gives you like a theme of the year. And then again, you can just apply it to your astrology. But I wish, you know what? I really wish that I had taken a photo of my wishes. I didn't. And for a little bit more context here, so you write your wishes before the 12 days starts. So you basically create 13, not even 12, 13 wishes. And like Lea said, you burn them, but you don't see it. You fold up your little wishes into paper, into small pieces, and you pick at random, which for me, that was the part that I loved, because instead of being like, okay, these are your intentions and put energy into all of them, it's like, no, you write it down, but then you give it to God. Like, you give it away.
And it's so magical, because on the 6th of January, you're like, which wish is remaining? Which one do I have to take care of?
I was so excited and like unattached and everything. And I remember I'm in right now my 8th perfection year, and that will go until my birthday in April. And the planet that's governing my perfection year is Saturn. And not even that, my ninth perfection year is also governed by Saturn. So bless me.
But you have one in Aquarius.
It was also in Capricorn.
Capricorn in Aquarius. So you could also look at Uranus for the 9th.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And basically, the one that I had remaining was to sell out my retreat. And I just also, knowing the theme of the year was going to be a lot around like kind of like discipline, responsibility. And at that time, I didn't have the same level of depth because we were just looking at the very high level themes. When I pulled it up again, I was like, oh, okay, this would have given me a lot more color last year. But so much of kind of where I was consciously focused this year and using my motivation, which is desire motivation, pretty much going out and making things happen, was on that retreat. And that then spun into, even now, I'm like focusing on the next retreat. So that's been like such a front theme. Whereas some of the other wishes I remember being about like relationships and partnership and things. And that was like just divine intervention, the way that me and my now partner came together and all of that, where it's like I did nothing and was just like allowed us to be pushed together in such a magical way. And that was
that
just
whole story of how you
hands.
met is a podcast episode in itself.
I keep saying I'm going to record it, and then I haven't been, but it really does. Like, it needs to be a full podcast episode because it's insane. And for someone who has always been very open to the mystical and spiritual for a long time now, I had never experienced something so profound as this, and like had my own psychic experiences. And yeah, that just kind of like ripped a door open for me of like what is possible. So yeah, that will definitely have to be a podcast episode. But yeah, it was just really cool to look back, and I wish I remembered what my wishes are. And I think this year I will take a picture of all of them. I don't know if you have like recommendations on that of doing it or not, but
I mean, I have written some of the wishes also in a Notion page, but I tend to not look at them anymore. For me, it always feels like the ones that I'm handing over to the universe, these are my comfort zone a little bit. And the one that
mm,
remains is like, yeah,
yeah,
you know that this is your biggest growth area in your life, and you can keep that. Do
yeah.
it yourself.
Yeah. And that's also how I felt with the retreat, where I, like, in my mind, I would have loved at that moment, because I had been working very hard and putting in a lot of time and energy and effort on that last retreat, which paid off, thankfully. But I, at that time, would have been like, please, God, just like do the rest for me. And then receiving that, I was kind of like, shit. But also like, okay, I know this is on me to do. And at least I can kind of ignore the background stuff, give that over, and just acknowledge that this is what this year is going to be about.
Yeah, it just gives so much peace because very often when we say, okay, you focus on one goal, then for me at least, I get really nervous. I'm like, what about the other goals? Like, I can't just focus on one. Also, this is my mental configuration in human design. And just knowing that the other intentions within that same area of my life, they're still taken care of. It just helps me to surrender.
It helps me be more receptive because, again, I just wouldn't do it if it was another way, because I don't want to strategically think about like, how am I making all of these things happen, and what's the roadmap and what's the plan, which is why I've resisted a lot of like traditional manifestation approaches of like writing the list and doing all like more strategic focused practices, and instead just working on like, okay, what can I unblock? What can I how can I align my inner state more to be a match for the things that I want? Because I'm not, yeah, I don't want to have to be like focused about all of this. Whereas again, this process like makes that easy because I just write these things down and then like let most of them go. And then the strategy's chosen for me.
Yeah, that's really nice. So I'm just thinking, how can we make this a little bit like tangible and practical? I would love for us to explain the difference between, for example, you desire motivation with the eighth house perfection year, and then for me with hope motivation and the 11th house perfection year, how that could translate into goals. So, for example, I'm going to be really honest, like at the time when I wrote my wishes last year, I wrote them with the intention of the communities. And I remember that the one that I pulled and I showed you, we were both like,
Mm-hmm.
huh? What? That's like, I think I had something that I am surrounded by people who support and, oh my God, it makes sense now. Oh my God, who support me and help me promote my passions or my services or something like that.
Mm.
It showed up completely differently for me because the year was like one shock after the other. Like, I had to go back from Bali to sort out the apartment situation in Amsterdam. And then it was like just being kicked out of the country, like energetically. And there was so many people that supported me and helped me with the move, and like it was a very much a family focused year, and at the same time I had to learn to accept help and be open and be vulnerable. So like that dichotomy of like trusting that the right people will be there for me to support me. That's what I then figured out was the theme and how I understood it. But for me, for example, with hope motivation and that theme, everything that I'm writing down is not coming from proactivity, but from this connection to the trust. So, for example, if Erin had the same theme, then she would write down something like, I'm going to make this community happen. I'm going to like,
I'm going to sell out my retreat in my
exactly,
take. Yeah.
like very like proactive, like, I don't want to say salesy, but like convincingly.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's more like I'm just standing there and
Yeah.
radiating with the
It's like
energy.
the most aligned community finds me, and Yeah.
Yes, it's not me doing and going out and looking for it, but arranging my inner world, and then that will attract what I am looking for in the outer world.
Mm.
Yeah. So for you, desire motivation, you said, were you last year in the 7th and the 8th?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was in the 7th until April, and then the
When
8th.
was the retreat?
April, end of April.
Ah, okay. So it's just shortly after the 7th house.
Yeah.
Perfection, yeah. I also met my last partner in the just at the end of the 6th house perfection. You're going into the 7th house perfection. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what can you maybe we can share the comparison. So desire motivation aligned is being fierce about your desires and
Yeah,
not
it's having
holding back. And
conviction. Having
yes, it's like Aries
conviction.
energy.
Yeah, exactly. Being a bit more proactive, a little bit more actionable, um, and involved. Like that's the best way I can kind of
Engaged,
put it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the if Aaron wouldn't be giving attention to these kind of thoughts, it's very likely that it will sound a bit like, oh, I'm going to see what happens with the retreat.
Yeah.
I'm
Or it's
just
like
going to observe.
quitting. It kind of like, you know what? I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm just maybe not. Maybe I'll let someone else take it over. Kind of avoidant, not
Yeah.
wanting to get involved, which I
Yeah,
had a
maybe.
moment of like almost being like, maybe not. And then diving back in. But
And I find that so interesting because it really, if you would hear me say something like that, it would be a completely different. I mean, obviously, there's nuance to everything, but like if you, Aaron has a proactive mental motivation and I have a surrendered mental motivation. And so there's just a different frequency, a different vibe
mhm,
to what is
yeah.
aligned for me to think about the things that I want to achieve and how I'm getting there versus how it is for you.
Yeah. And that's what it all comes down to is frequency. And you're not really, you don't need to actively try to be aligned to your motivation, right? Like it's a natural byproduct to you living correctly as yourself. But it's really helpful being able to spot when you slip into like that opposite side, which for me is like the avoidance, the wanting to throw in the towel, not get involved. And for you is like actively jumping in and trying to fix. But it comes down to frequency. And so when you're thinking in the right ways, that impacts the frequency of your entire energy, your energetic body, your entropic field. And then again, that's impacting your ability to make certain things happen, whether it's in a proactive way or an active way.
Yeah. It's usually the opposite what you find more comfortable. If you have a surrendered motivation, for me, being active, proactive is so much more my comfort zone. And for you, probably being surrendered and like lean back is more your
Yeah.
comfort zone. And that's it. I think it's just so beautiful because then you understand, oh, it's hard because it's new for me.
Yeah.
And
It's
I'm,
not hard because it's wrong. It's hard because it's new. And
yeah,
that's the kind of discomfort you want to step into as opposed to just because, we always say in human design, sometimes it gives you a way of understanding what is your path of least resistance. But the path of least resistance doesn't mean easy. Following your design doesn't mean easy. You are going to more easily meet the things that you're here to meet, but there's still going to be discomfort as you dismantle like old operating systems and ways of doing things that weren't in alignment, but they were your comfort zone.
yeah. So I reflected on the hopeful spouse workshop the other day, and when people ask me what is it for me, as a projector, everything that I do is awareness based. I'm not so much interested in, oh, you're gonna get like 10K followers if you do this step, but it's like the workshop is a nice playful way to understand how you can spot the patterns of your mind going down pathways that are not going to support you and that are just going to make you feel anxious, like an imposter, like you can't achieve the things that you want to achieve. And then if your mind is loud, you slowly lose the connection to your body, which is where your intuition sits, unless you have a mental intuition as well. which is then even more important that you think aligned thoughts, so you focus on the
Yeah.
aligned thoughts. And it basically, yeah, it helps you to understand that everything is kind of up to you, where you put your focus and your attention to. And then obviously the nice byproduct of it is that you have one goal, you ask the universe for support, and you're set up for the year because you understand what's going to happen, and then can react with more
Yeah,
composure. Yeah.
totally. Yeah, and it's interesting. So again, with my year being ruled by Saturn and a lot around, I forget what it had said last year, like at the very high level summary of eighth year, I think was a lot around like I circulate, maybe.
I think,
And
I mean, if you've Saturn, you have Capricorn in your eighth house.
hmm
So, well, you had the retreat. There was a lot of shared resources, shared finances,
hmm
merging of skills and
yeah,
talents, and
yeah.
approaching that with some sort of structure.
Yeah. And I think what I had thought that this year was going to bring was like, this was going to be the year that I like systematize, get my structure set up, get responsible, get serious. Having done this ChatGPT prompt again, what I see now is like this year was more about subtraction and like purification, more inward focused, a lot around debts, entanglements, power dynamics, stripping away things, because this next year is then more around like creating the discipline, setting down the train tracks that are then going to like, because Saturn's not about instant gratification either, but it's like the necessary work. And this year was the purification that leads to next year being like setting down the railroad tracks. And again, not moving fast, not blowing things up, but starting to go outward more. And it just makes so much sense.
It's so interesting also to look at the house system in human design, and not in human design, in astrology, where you have the 12, basically the 12 chapters, which is each
Mm-hmm.
month stands for its own chapter. And then you start with Aries season, which is, your sense of self, your identity. It's like getting to know your body. And then you move through self-worth, communication, your roots, your joy, your daily routines, your relationships. Then you're going to the eighth house where you're decluttering, you're like letting things die that you maybe realized in the first 7 months have accumulated, so that you can then in the ninth house adjust your beliefs. And then 10th house is peak, is like everything that I learned in this year is going to be broadcasted and published. And like now it's like like the big stage moment where you're presenting the play to the outside world. And then you go to the 11th house year, and then you're again thinking about, what people do I want to surround myself with, what is the big vision of my life. And then you go to the 12th house, and it's almost like the female cycle. That's where the
Yeah.
bleed happens, where
Yeah.
you let everything go that has
Mm.
happened before, and then you start all over again. And then the egg forms again. And then, seventh house would be the follicular ovulation, where then the fertilization can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's just really nice to know that everything kind of happens in cycles, and everything has a time and a
Yeah.
place. So you don't have to do everything in one year. You don't have
Yeah.
to do the career and the home planning in one year. I mean, unless
Yeah.
you want to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely nice. And at least in my case too, like being able to see like, okay, I get why this year has felt heavy in a lot of ways. And I see how next year there might still be some residual of that, but I see where it's moving now and I can contextualize the why a lot better.
Yeah, totally. You know what also is really helpful? When you go through the different themes for the years, and then you go to your phone and type
Mm.
in the year in the photo album, and then you just look at the
Mm.
pictures of that year. And for me, I can kind of see what mindset I was in and what I
Yeah.
was going through. And because next year I'm going to be in the 12th house year, I looked to the last time I was in that phase, and I was 23, and I remember that the relationship with my ex-boyfriend was like sort of fizzling out, but instead of me wanting to cling on to it, I felt like I was stepping into my power and I was setting more boundaries. I have Aries in my 12th house. So
Yeah.
like all of the unconscious doubts, they came up, but in an empowered way, so I could choose them
Mhm.
different. And so the reason why I did that was because when I went on YouTube, everyone was talking about 12th house perfection year, worst year of my life, so many things, bad things happen. I'm like, well, fuck that. I have hope motivation.
Yeah.
How how am I going to work with that? So I just gave myself a brainwash and I reminded myself, no, it's individual. Just because it happened for someone else doesn't mean it needs to happen for
Yeah.
you that way.
Yeah.
It's your own story.
Totally. Well, I'm really excited to do mine this year, and I'm probably going to get my entire family to do it as well. And yeah, for anyone who is interested in participating in this and also bringing all of this context around it, because I will say, like, that's a huge game changer. And I think without it, it could just be another one of those silly little rituals that you do and kind of forget about it. But with the right focus, with the right intention, using your mechanics, using your energy, you can really actually make something with this time, which I think is really incredible. So, how can people get involved?
I guess we're going to put a link in the show notes of the YouTube. You can also, I have a website where you can purchase it. It's basically 44 euro, and you get access to a PDF that has links to a 1 hour audio. There is, in total, I think there's like 13 pages, but there's like, don't freak out. There's only like 8 pages with actual like information where you learn about your design, and the rest is more like timestamps and things like that. So yeah, and it's basically like once you, as you said, like you buy it once and then you can do it every year, you learn to understand not only how your mind works, but maybe even your partner's mind, because I listed all of the 6 human design motivations with the aligned thoughts and the, let's say, resistance thoughts. And that's just such a nice formula that you can take into your life. And every time you approach a new task, you're like, wait a minute, what am I
Yeah.
thinking here? So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's where you can find it. And I would love for you to join us.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.